Canada's calm, collected, and quietly racking up wins. Trump's running around like a clearance sale blow-up doll in a hurricane, and Doug Ford, well, he's on CNN, sleeves rolled up and ready to wage tariff war like it's D-Day on dairy.
This week, Mexico schools the trolls, Trump taxes half of the planet, premiers gang up on chaos, and South Park body slams Kristi Noem.
So stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll see why Canada's driving the bus, why the loudest critics are stuck in the back seat, and why the US is paying the cover charge for its own disaster.
So while Trump is getting roasted and trying to still distract from the list, he decided to share the misery worldwide.
Yep, over 60 countries got slapped with his Make Imports Cry Again tax, anywhere from 10 to 50%.
We're talking the EU, Japan, Taiwan, Vietnam, even Switzerland. Anyone, basically, who isn't sending in private jets and gold bars.
And when reporters asked how much money these tariffs would bring in, he said hundreds of billions. No data, no math, just whatever popped into his head before lunch. Just like when he promised Americans would save 1,000% on medical bills.
And where's all that money going? Well, he's building himself a brand new ballroom, and J.D. Vance is busy diverting river water so he can go boating on his birthday. The rich are having a blast, all paid for by Americans footing the tariff bill.
So, how's that mega means prosperity thing working out for you so far, eh?
Tariffs aren't free money, people. They're a tax on you, the consumer. Higher prices, lower wages, and a slower economy.
Trump isn't even pretending this is fair. Apple CEO Tim Cook walked into the Oval Office with a $100 billion investment pledge, plus a custom-made 24-karat gold-based plaque. In return, 0 tariffs on Apple.
If you're not following the Apple way, you get the full tariff hammer. Follow it, and you get a handshake, a photo op, and your products sail through untouched.
It's open-air bribery with a gold plate on it. And the rest of the world, well, they get a bill along with the American consumers.
And nowhere is that bill coming due faster than right here at home on the front lines of the Canada-US border.
Because at the Windsor-Detroit border, Canada's auto town feels like it's being yanked straight into the river.
Trump's steel and auto tariffs are hurting hard. Windsor has hit 11.2% unemployment, Canada's highest, losing 5,000 jobs in 5 months.
Stellantis and GM have idled lines, EV optimism is turning cold, and in the US, Ford expects a $3 billion hit, GM up to $5 billion because of tariffs. Ford Motor Company also posted a $29 million loss for the quarter, compared to $1.8 billion profit for the same period last year. Even the big guns are bleeding.
And in Detroit, the governor went straight to the Oval Office, deck in hand, warning that Michigan's 600,000 auto jobs supporting both sides of the border, it's all at stake.
Cities like Windsor and Detroit share more than water. Their economies are fused together. Now they're choking on tariffs aimed at border bond economies.
This is exactly why Canada's building alternatives, because you can't rebuild decades of supply chain trust overnight, but you can start rerouting it.
And to do that, you need a united front, which is exactly what we saw this week at the First Ministers meeting, where the premiers finally got on the same page. Premiers from every political stripe, Liberal, NDP, and even Ford's PCs backed Carney's plan to stand firm against Trump's tariff tantrums. Ford came in hot with a tariff-for-tariff battle cry, basically hit the US with taxes until they blink.
Carney, as usual, cool, measured, and targeting tariffs where they actually hurt the US without jacking up prices for Canadians.
It's a good combo. Ford plays the loud hype man, and Carney, he plays chess.
And a key part of that chess game is not falling into Trump's trap of a dumb, slug-for-slug tariff war. Doug Ford's big idea, tariff-for-tariff, strength, not weakness.
Which sounds tough until you realize it's also inflation for inflation.
Carney's going for surgical strikes, targeting U.S. goods that we can easily replace with Canadian or global alternatives. You want to hit them where it hurts without punching your own grocery bill in the face.
Because jacking prices on Canadians just to look tough isn't strength. It's hitting your own people with higher costs, and that's not helping Canadians.
Let Carney run the playbook, and Ford can keep tossing t-shirts into the stands and high-fiving the mascots.
And while he's tossing t-shirts, Carney's government has been executing the playbook. The best example? Fixing our relationship with Mexico to build a massive tariff workaround.
So let's clear one thing up. Mexico did not dump Canada.
Right, that's last year's drama. The real story isn't about a grudge, it's about a reset. This week, President Claudia Sheinbaum was standing next to our ministers in Mexico City, basically saying, why would we need a separate deal? We're focused on the one that we already have, and that's called CUSMA.
And let's be clear, it doesn't mean that everything is automatically tariff-free, unfortunately.
No, but what you can look at is like a rule book that gives us a path to avoid tariffs. But our companies have to do the paperwork to prove they qualify.
And with Trump's new 35% tariff gun pointed at us, you better believe every Canadian exporter is suddenly learning how to fill out those forms. That's why this partnership with Mexico is so critical right now.
You're so right, Deb. So the headline isn't Mexico rejects Canada. The real story is Canada and Mexico are teaming up to build workarounds while the US builds walls. We're talking cargo ships sailing straight from BC or Halifax into Mexican ports like Manzanillo or Veracruz, then hitting Mexico's highways and rail for distribution without touching US soil.
It's tariff avoidance by geography.
And every container we move this way is money staying in Canada and Mexico. Plus one less headache at US border crossings that move slower than dial-up internet.
But here's where it gets a little bit spicy. Canada and Mexico can also bypass the US, not just by sea, but by rail.
Meet CPKC, the first full North American railway built from the Canada-US-Mexico merger. It's a real land bridge. And yes, that headline is literal.
Yep, earlier this year, a train loaded with Saskatchewan oat shot through the US. No offload, and it went straight to Mexico. No tariffs, no Trump middleman.
This isn't just oats. It's aluminum, propane, French fries, furniture. It's every train-friendly product Trump tried to tax. They call it a land bridge. We know what it is. A railway-sized middle finger to the Trump chaos.
Technically, it does pass through the US, but all these cars are bonded freight. They're sealed, locked, and not entering the US market.
It's like using US space as a hallway you don't pay rent for. Trump can wave at the train, but he can't touch the cargo.
This is the kind of in-depth strategy we love breaking down for you. And if you want to support this channel and get more behind-the-scenes content, this is the perfect time to join our YouTube membership.
It's called the A-Team. You get cool badges, exclusive posts, and you help us keep making videos just like this one. The link's right below. Welcome to the team.
While Carney's government is playing 3D chess on the world stage, back home the Conservatives are at it again, playing checkers in a clown car. And that brings us to the by-election in Alberta, where the longest ballot in Canadian history is at stake.
That's right. The polls are open in Battle River Crowfoot for what might be the pettiest political subplot of the summer.
Yeah, for the first time, Elections Canada is making voters hand-write their choice, because there are 214 candidates running.
And no, that's not democracy on steroids. It's a coordinated protest from the longest ballot committee, whose mission is to make Pierre Poilievre's political life harder than a Wordle in Klingon.
Poilievre's calling it a scam, which is rich coming from a guy who lost his Ottawa seat and had to parachute into rural Alberta just to get back in the House of Commons.
The man went from common sense to please write my name correctly in a box.
Here's a thought. If your base can't pick your name out of 214 people, or spell it well enough for Elections Canada to figure it out, maybe they're not qualified to vote for you to run a G7 country.
Good point. But They did make it easy for his base. You can misspell his name and it still counts. But if you just write conservative, it doesn't, which is perfect because spelling accountability has never been their strong suit.
The bottom line, if Polyev scrapes in with less than 80%, it's a flashing neon sign that he isn't fit to lead the party. And if Bonnie Critchley keeps hammering him from the other side, that number's only going to sink faster than his common sense slogan.
And speaking of watching absurd characters who are unfit to lead, South Park just took on Christy No.
Yep, South Park dropped another episode, and this time they went straight for the Homeland Security Chief, Christy Botox Barbie Gnome.
And honestly, South Park doesn't even have to exaggerate anymore. Reality is already the parody.
They nailed her for everything from the infamous dog shooting, the frozen face Botox, and her horrible ICE policies. It's dark, it's brutal, and yet it's still less horrifying than the real thing.
Last week, they had Trump in bed with Satan. Now this. And the irony? They dropped this episode right after Paramount inked a $1.5 billion merger, one that needed Trump's FCC blessing.
So they canceled Colbert, presumably to soothe Trump's ego. But guess what, Dave? Colbert's ratings are skyrocketing thanks to this backlash. And the creators of South Park, they got paid by the same studio.
Colbert's burning bright, South Park's on fire, and Trump's running around saying Fallon and Kimmel are next to go.
In most dictatorships, satire dies first. But if Trump thought that this was a win, he just bought himself a 24-karat gold roast.
And that same chaotic energy is exactly why Canada isn't just reacting to this crisis. We're quietly building a future that's insulated from it. Churchill, Manitoba is on track to become a major Arctic shipping hub, giving us a direct gateway to Europe and Asia without begging US ports for permission. Meanwhile, thanks to Kuzma, 85% of our trade with the US is still tariff-free. While other countries are getting slammed with double-digit tariffs, Canada's still cruising in the fast lane, seatbelt on, while we build even more routes.
Kuzma is buying Canada the time, and Carney's using every spare minute to lay fresh pavement with new deals from the UAE to the Indo-Pacific.
It's called a global pivot, and it's not just trade diversification. It's insurance against economic hostage-taking.
But if we've learned one thing in 2025, it's this. The less we rely on the US, the more control we have over our own future.
We're not just surviving Trump's trade war, we're outgrowing it.
Every new deal is a brick in the foundation of an economy that America can't bully.
And every time we choose Canadian-made, invest in our own industries, or expand trade beyond Washington's reach, we make it that much harder for Trump or any US president to hold us hostage.
So keep it up, Canada. Look for the Canada tag in stores. When you buy Canadian, you're supporting farmers, our workers, and our independence from Trump's illegal tariffs. And don't fall for Campbell Soup's Made in Canada labels, okay? That's the recipe that was made in Canada. They left Canada a long time ago for the USA.
No soup for you. And remember, if you want to wear that pride on your sleeve or your chest, literally, we've got you covered. We have new Canadian Pride merch in our store. Shirts, hoodies, all designed to show that we're not backing down.
The link's in the description. Skip the US markup and support the channel and look great doing it.
Travel Canadian as well. US travel is already down, and that's not just due to politics. It's people making value-based choices. Watch our Friday videos where we showcase a new Canadian destination each week.
And check out our Canadian playlist in the links below.
So remember, ignore the trolls, ignore the tantrums. This is about Canadian sovereignty done right.
Because the PPs and Trumps of the world will keep shouting, but Canada, we're winning, one grassroots choice at a time.
And if you made it this far, you're clearly one of us. So if you haven't already, please hit that like button. It really helps the algorithm, and make sure you're subscribed so that you don't miss our next video.
Thanks for watching, and stay calm and Carney on.